Just show up. If one of your friends or someone you care about is going through the worst tragedy of their life, people often ask me, what do I do? How do I help? I'm Christy Bundakumara. I happen to be a psychiatric nurse practitioner, but I have gone through that tragedy. I have lost 3 children and my husband over 2 decades. And so there has been many times in my life where my friends and my family showed up for me. And today, I need to show up for somebody else. Whew. So what do you actually do? When I say show up, I mean be present, when it's appropriate, when you can. People often ask me about mental strength, and they want to teach someone or tell someone what to do during this tragedy. If you have not personally gone through the tragedy, you probably don't know. You can imagine, maybe. Oftentimes I hear people say to me, I can't even imagine what you've gone through. I can't even imagine what I would do in your situation. So if you want to be there for someone else, I encourage you to be on that mentally strong journey, right? You can go to my website. There's a link down below where you can download a How to Be Mentally Strong. This is not for the person going through the trauma. If you go and you show up in a way that is not healthy for you or for them, it can strain the relationship. I often hear, I obviously have a lot of followers who have lost a child, and I often hear people say, my relationships are now strained. I don't, this person didn't show up for me, and so therefore, we're no longer friends, or different things like that. I was blessed to have people show up for me, and I want you to be able to show up for other people. And I'm teared up today because the reality is right after this video, I'm going to the hospital to visit someone who will likely lose their son, their 3-year-old baby. And yes, I can imagine what she's feeling, but it still causes a reaction in me. And I think this is what happens when people can't show up for their friends and family, is that there's a trigger. She's living people's worst nightmare. I have lived people's worst nightmare. And so they feel like they can't show up. They can't face that. But please try to show up for people. You don't have to understand in order to show up. And even though I somewhat understand, right? I mean, every situation is different. Everybody's reaction is different. We never 100% understand what someone's going through. And looking at me may be very hard for her because she doesn't want to lose her child. And so I might not be helpful at all. But I'm going to try to show up. And I'm going to regulate my own emotions, my own triggers, my own fears. Yes, I'm nervous to show up. And I know people, if you have someone in your life that's going through a tragedy, I know that you're afraid. You're afraid to say something wrong. You're afraid your own reaction. And that's hard. And that's why, understanding what mental strength is and how to actually be able to regulate our own emotions so that we can help other people, I'm very passionate about. And so what are some things you can do? Well, I'm going to give you the don'ts and the do's, right? Don't say stupid stuff. And I'm going to give you some examples of stupid stuff. I've had someone say to a friend of mine who lost her son in a drunk driving accident. Someone said to them, well, you have 2 other kids. Focus on them. To every parent out there, their response wanted to be, I'm sure they didn't say it out loud, but if you had more than one child, could you pick the one that you would be okay with dying so that you could focus on the others? Right? That is enormously stupid statement, right? And I think people are afraid to even show up because what if they accidentally say something stupid? Well, if you accidentally say something stupid, apologize. Apologize. I mean, and that's the reality is I think people are so afraid then so they don't show up. If you say something stupid, just apologize. Don't say everything happens for a reason. That could be 100% absolutely true. That's not what they need to hear at that moment. Don't say God only gives hardship to those who can handle it. Wow, what an unfair God that you're telling them. And just think about, even if you accidentally say things like that, just think about how that lands to someone who may have just lost a child or is about to lose a child or lost their husband or something horribly tragic is happening, like some terminal diagnosis. Oh, God thinks that you're strong enough to do that, to handle that. How unfair is that? Again, you say stupid things, apologize. What can you do? One, ask permission for things, right? Maybe you want to know what happened. Can you want to talk about details of what happened? Ask permission. For example, one of the ways that I'm preparing myself for this, going to the hospital to meet my friend, is before I ask anything or say anything, ask permission. Because even myself thinking, okay, I've been here, not in the exact situation, but I've been in the place of losing a child. I've been in a place of almost losing a child. And in my story, I lost my child. My child died. That is not what she wants to hear, right? But maybe she wants to talk about that. Maybe she doesn't. And so I will be constantly reminding myself to ask permission to talk about those things. It would be arrogant of me to go in and say, let's talk about how you're going to feel when you lose your child. Again, it's not about me. It is about showing up for that person and what they need. So if you're not sure they want to talk about something, ask permission. Do things for them. I think a lot of people feel comfortable in this area and, they'll put together like meal trains and they'll send gifts of food or gift cards to help someone get through something. And I remember when we first found out the tragedy of which was happening to our friend, one of my friends just started crying, what is an effing meal going to actually do for her? Nothing. But don't not do it, right? Yes, the gifts and the food and all of that does not in any way take away the pain. But what it does do is tell that person going through the tragedy that there's people that care, that there's people that want to do something, and so they're trying to show up. And so I remember after my daughter Maya died, or maybe it was Reggie, I don't know it all. My friend drove in from about an hour and a half away, and I'm just laying on the couch. I don't need crying. I'm not even in my whole headspace. And she's just cleaning my house. She's cleaning my house. And she didn't know what to do. She didn't know what to say. But she showed up. And she found something to do. So when there's nothing to say, just be present. Try to do something. And finally, give the person going through the tragedy grace. If they say something mean to you, are rude to you, are irritable, right now I'm going through this stage of being pretty irritable. It's about a month from my husband's death, and I've got videos on how I'm trying to grieve that, but I'm just irritable. My friends will lovingly call me out on that, right? But in the midst, I was angry and probably snappy. And I remember very distinctly looking at all of the flowers that had been given to me. And these are people that, again, were just trying to show up. And I was so angry that I took these flowers to the garage and just threw the vases on the floor. The glass was shattering everywhere. And I did it in what I thought was like a controlled grief kind of way. And my friends just showed up for me. They'd let me act like a complete idiot in that moment. And so giving them grace, if they're mean to you, if they say something snappy, if they do something that you think is inappropriate, like yell at a nurse, or I don't know, there are all kinds of things. Don't pass judgment on how somebody's responding to the worst thing that's ever happened to them. Again, just show up. And I'm going to try to just show up for my friend today. I have some other videos on, what to say, not to say, how to talk to someone who's just lost a child. Continue watching my content. It's authentic, real, genuine. It is the way to be mentally strong.